This is the St. Roch National Historic Site at Vancouver's Vanier Park. The St. Roch was an RCMP ship that gained international fame through her many voyages in Canada's high Arctic. Since being retired in 1954, she's been fully restored by the Canadian Park Service of Environment Canada. Ahoy and welcome aboard. Welcome to Red's Classic Theatre. This is the St. Roch, one of Vancouver's most popular tourist attractions, and we'll show you more of it a little later on. Our movie this week is the 1935 United Artists classic, The Scarlet Pimpernel, starring Merle Oberon and Leslie Howard. The film was produced by the brilliant Alexander Korda, who also had romantic designs on leading Lady Oberon. But while he wasn't looking, suave Leslie Howard carried on a brief affair with her. She eventually did marry Korda, but not until 5 years later. And now, here's Act 1 of The Scarlet Pimpernel. Red's Classic Theatre is on location this week at the St. Roch National Historic Site in Vancouver, where a fascinating piece of Canadian history has been beautifully preserved. The St. Roch was built especially for the RCMP in 1928 to transport staff and supplies to the high Arctic. And when you take a look around the St. Roch, you get an idea of what life was like for those who sailed her. The mess, the crew quarters, the wheelhouse. Every compartment on the St. Roch is neat and tidy with little space wasted. The St. Roch's most famous voyages took place during the 1940s, when ship and crew twice endured journeys through the fog, blizzards, and treacherous pack ice of the Canadian Arctic. We'll be back with more in just a moment. A fascinating day of maritime discovery is yours to enjoy at the St. Roch Historic Site. The exhibit is open year-round with tours available in multiple languages. Right now, your visit may be detoured by restoration work. Because the ship is displayed out of water, its great weight has caused it and its supports to sag. But it's still a fascinating site to visit. For more information, call the St. Roch at 666-3201. That's 666-3201. And now back to Leslie Howard in The Scarlet Pimpernel. Hope you're enjoying the 1935 production of The Scarlet Pimpernel on Red's Classic Theatre. We're on the upper deck of the St. Roch. You know, leading man Leslie Howard had an unusual introduction to acting. After suffering shell shock while serving in World War I, he was encouraged to take up acting as therapy. Howard made his professional debut in London, but it was in the U.S. that he became a star. During the 1930s, he appeared with some of Hollywood's most glamorous leading women, such as Mary Pickford in Secrets, Betty Davis in Of Human Bondage, and The Petrified Forest, and with Norma Shearer in Romeo and Juliet. But perhaps his best-known role in America was opposite Vivien Leigh in the hugely successful 1939 movie Gone with the Wind. Unfortunately, his earlier brush with the horrors of war would return to haunt him. While serving the British government in 1943, Leslie Howard's plane was shot down by Nazi flyers who mistakenly thought Winston Churchill was aboard. Film buffs to this day remember the incredible leading man, Leslie Howard. And now let's return to the Scarlet Pimpernel. Aboard the St. Roch, it's time to look at our mailbag, and thank you for the letters you continue to send in requesting motion pictures. Vicki Ayers from Coquitlam is a Doris Day fan. She'd like to see most of her films, including Lullaby of Broadway and My Dream Is Yours. Mrs. D. Wilson from Surrey would like to see The Sound of the Fury, starring Yul Brynner and Joanne Woodward. All of the requests that you send into Red's Classic Theatre are kept on file by the KVUS Programming Department for future reference when selecting motion pictures. So be sure to send in your requests to Red Robinson KVUS TV in Vancouver. That's Red Robinson KVUS TV in Vancouver. Coming up next week, Doris Day, David Niven, and Janice Page in the delightful 1960 comedy Please Don't Eat the Daisies. And 2 weeks from tonight, H.G. Wells' vision of the future as depicted in the 1936 movie Things to Come, starring Raymond Massey, Sir Cedric Hardwicke, and Ralph Richardson. And now, back to the Scarlet Pimpernel. Our feature on Red's Classic Theatre tonight is the 1935 production, The Scarlet Pimpernel. And we're on the deck of the St. Roch here in Vanier Park in Vancouver. You know, looking back at this particular era in motion pictures, it's surprising to find out the salaries being earned by actors and actresses of the day. In 1935, for example, James Cagney became one of the screen's top stars and was paid a princely $150,000 a year. Comic actor Joe E. Brown was even more highly valued, earning $173,000. Meanwhile, after his hit appearance in the Petrified Forest, Humphrey Bogart was still making only about $50,000 a year. But then again, in 1935, you could still buy something major for $50,000. Probably the biggest penny pinchers amongst the movie moguls were the Warner Brothers, Jack and Harry. And even though they tried desperately to keep costs down, their actor James Cagney, by the 1940s, was earning a staggering $350,000 a year. But then, as now, the public was willing to pay for their entertainment pleasures. And now back to the Scarlet Pimpernel. Well, aboard the St. Roch, it's time for our movie trivia quiz. And this comes from our Academy Award file. During the 1973 Academy Awards, a very famous presenter was interrupted by a streaker. Our question is, who was the famous presenter and what was the fate of the streaker? We'll be back with the answer in just a moment. Here's the answer to our movie trivia quiz. At the 1973 Academy Awards, the presenter who was interrupted by a streaker in mid-sentence was David Niven. And although the audience laughed, it was no laughing matter when it came to the fate of the streaker. He was identified as Robert Opal, and he was found murdered in San Francisco 5 years later. And now let's return to the Scarlet Pimpernel. Well, that's a wrap for this week's edition of Red's Classic Theater. I hope you enjoyed the Scarlet Pimpernel starring Leslie Howard and Merle Oberon. Be sure to join us next Sunday on Red's Classic Theater for a comedy classic, Please Don't Eat the Daisies, starring Doris Day and David Niven. In the meantime, if there's a motion picture you'd like to see or the suggestion of a location, write to Red Robinson, KVUS-TV in Vancouver. And our thanks to Gordon DeJean, the manager of the St. Roch National Historic Site, and to our tour guide here, Richard Mills. And Richard also sent in the suggestion of coming here to this historic site. See you next Sunday for Please Don't Eat the Daisies. Until then, from the St. Roch, good night, everybody.